I want to welcome everybody tonight to our reorganization meeting. Have a couple housekeeping notes or whatever you want to call it. First of all, Director Hauk is not here tonight because he had a commitment at work, and I believe that job pays a little bit better than this one, so he chose to do that. And Dr. Bell had told us a year ago that if we moved it from Thursday to Tuesday, he would not be able to make it, so he's not here as well. But I want to welcome our new people, and our, like me, the old people, and we'll get into reorganizing this. There's one other announcement. Mr. Byler is going to meet with board members after the committee meetings to introduce you to the new technology and whatever, and that's set up over in the board conference room, so we'll be moving over there after we're all done here. Okay, so now our first order of business is to elect a temporary president, and we have I think I had sent you a letter ahead of time, but we have 4 members that are eligible to be temporary president, and that would be Bonnie Bipsler, Glenn Gray, David Hauk, who's not here, and Stephen Lum. So I will entertain a motion for recommendation for a temporary president.
I nominate Steve Lum.
Oh, come on.
I know what to do.
Do I have a second for that?
Oh, okay. Then don't second it. You guys don't want to do it.
I already seconded.
Yeah, we already,
sorry.
I got my second, that's okay.
You're for the ride.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, Mr. Lum, if you want to move over here,
One and only chance.
and your first order of business will be to swear in the new board members.
Okay.
And here's the oath. And their election certificates are in here, which you can give to them after they're sworn in. Okay?
I can do that. I
All
think they usually come up here, don't they?
Yes.
The new board members, old and newly elected. Come to the front. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly affirm that I will support,
I do solemnly affirm that I will support,
obey, and defend the Constitution
obey, and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Wonderful. Welcome. I'll shake your hand again. Yes, I'm sorry. This time, I would like to ask the nominating committee for the slate of officers. Who would be offering that to us?
The nominating committee received nominations for Glenn Gray as president and Beth Heckman and Amy Stahl for vice president. And the nomination committee is requesting open ballot for the ballot.
First, for the president, any additional nominations for president? No additional names. Anybody want to make a motion to close the nomination?
Make a motion to close the nomination.
Second?
Second.
We can do a voice vote.
Yes.
Okay, let's do a voice vote for president. And this is for President Glenn Gray. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Glenn is our new president. Congratulations, Glenn. Now for our vice president. There are 2 names that have been presented. Do we have any other names on the floor for vice president? hear anybody want to make a motion to close the
Make a motion to close the nominations.
second.
Second.
We're going to do the ballots, and then if you want this to be open to everyone, please. I should have let you do the vice president. You're the president. Do I finish it? Oh.
As long as you want.
Trade you. This is good.
And Mrs. Martin is going to tally the votes for me. Okay. Amy Sell. And did you want me to read the names, or do you want to wait till they're in the minutes?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Read them.
Okay, Amy Sell, by Glenn Gray. Amy Sell, Rachel England. Amy Sell, Nate Bergman. Beth Heckman, Steve Lum. Amy Sell, Beth Heckman. Amy Sell, Bonnie Bixler. Amy Sell, and Amy Sell, Stacy Murray.
Congratulations, Amy. At this time, I'll be happy to turn this remaining part of the meeting over to Glenn, our new president. Thank you. Am I supposed to use this?
Yeah. Not on me.
We're starting the second part of it.
Yes, we're going to start now with Amy's.
This one?
Well, good evening, everyone. I will try to go through this as painless as possible for everyone. I am on the learning curve now of Robert's Rules of Order or whatever. I have to quickly go get a book. So I will try to do this as orderly as possible. I would like to thank everyone for their confidence in me. Those who have talked to me about this know that I was not come willingly, but I understood the need for the transition and what we're about to embark on. So for that point, I am extremely excited on what the new board represents and what the community has asked us to do. I just would ask that the community be patient. Change does not happen overnight, and systems and things like that that we're looking to improve are not going to all of a sudden tomorrow morning we change. It will be a process, sometimes slow and sometimes you might get impatient, but we will have an idea of where we want to go, and from there we will set our course and do it methodically until we get there. I am fiscally responsible as far as if I asked how do I look at the school board, I really look at it as two functions. The first one is obviously as a taxpayer myself, but also in charge of the budget. We as a board have to be very fiscally responsible as how we spend taxpayers' money. And so we'll be looking at a lot of different expenses. The last year we have seen quite a few additional expenses that have eaten away at our ending fund balance. We have a looming problem, obviously, with the state budget that is going to slowly creep up on us if the state does not do something. So we'll be looking at those things. But on the other side of it, there are the children that we are in our care to make sure that they get a solid education, and that is the second part of the piece of the puzzle. The first one is how do we finance it? The second one is how do we take those finances and best use that money to facilitate the best education we can for our children. And that's the balance that I like to see, that there's going to be a little bit of both. I'll never get everything that I want, and Dave Houck said one time, he said, when we got into some really tough things, he said, you're going to have programs you like them both, and you just have to decide which one goes, just because that's just the nature of, we don't have all the money, and I totally understand that. So don't expect big changes. I'm not going to come in here and do all these crazy things. Everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Anybody knows me, I'm much more calmer and slow paced than that. So then enough gibbering about myself. Let's go on now to, I like having this, I don't have a 4-minute thing either, do I?
No, you don't.
That was a side joke for anybody. All right, we have swearing in, dates and places of the regular board meeting. So I move to establish, do I read this?
You would be asking for a motion from one of the members.
Okay, do I have a motion from one of the board members to set the date, time, and place of our regular board meetings?
We need to have it before we can discuss it. Hopefully discuss it.
You have the motion and a second, and then ask for discussion.
I make a motion to move the meeting schedule for together.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I have a question about this time next year. I was aware that Dr. Brown would be able to be here for Summit Tuesday. Is that the case every year, or was it just this particular year?
Well, next year, the calendar falls differently, kind of depends how the yearly calendar falls. There shouldn't be a problem next year, because we're actually a week later.
Oh, okay.
Just the way the days, so it should not be a
So
problem.
it should be okay. And I guess my next question is, if we are not going to do the dinner, do we need to start at 5:30? Or do we want to do the dinner? Because it is kind of early to get dinner to my family to get out the door. If it's at 5, right. So my question is, if we're not going to do the dinner, can we move it to 6? Or if we're going to do the dinner, let's decide that now and not wait until I'm at the work.
I think we should do the dinner.
Yeah.
I would be in favor of the dinner.
I was in favor of it this year, but yeah, we got to work.
So keep it at 5:30 and plan on doing the presentation. That was my only question about that was the
Any other discussion?
Roll call.
plan. You can do it.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Now we need to designate newspaper for legal notice. Do I have a nomination? That might be.
Yeah, somebody, if they want to suggest, there's a
motion to suggest a paper?
Suggested name of paper.
Lebanon Daily News.
Second.
So, shall we combine that into one?
And you can then discussion.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of Lebanon Daily News?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Is there any old business? Anyone have any old business? Now, the appointment of representatives, it says by board president. Do I have to do that tonight?
If you want to do it tonight, that would be great. It helps you get things in place. Or if you want to look at the one you need to change, print it out. First, you go back and do it, let you know.
Do we usually do it, do we usually do it the same night, or is it then, it's done afterwards?
Gives you a little more time to think about it.
Yeah.
The only thing, and Mary, maybe you have more information, but I know when you were here, last week maybe, or the week before, Dr. Bell had mentioned, discussing IU to get a representative at the end of the attorney.
Yeah, and that's, I think I have on here, state committee agenda, because I have a
Oh,
blank on there.
okay, so that's gonna come later, okay,
That one we should try to do tonight if possible.
right, okay.
And that's the IU.
Yes, that you can ask people like secrecy and certainly ask them
For the IU 13 board of school directors, we should. Do I have a volunteer or someone who would like to be considered?
I think I'm being nominated.
Well, just with your background, I think that you would, you would.
Okay, we have, I would like to put forth Stacy Murray as the IU 13 Board of School Directors representative for Northern Lebanon. Stacy. And I will fill the other positions next week.
I
I just want to make sure.
Glenn, just for your consideration, I definitely would be willing to continue with Northern Lebanon Rec. I know it's not listed here, it's not one of the primary, but I would certainly be willing to continue in that position.
Recreation
Is
Commission.
it here? Where?
Recreation Commission, I have,
Down here.
okay.
No,
It's
recognition.
there. It's there.
I'd like to go ahead and make a presidential declaration and have Amy take the rec commission
Thank you.
effective immediately.
Very good.
I'm loving this thing here. Okay.
And also, hack is not on there, and you had sent me an email, I tried to respond, but that email went reach. I don't know, probably, but could you explain to Glenn then about the hack?
I don't know if I copied you on that or not. Did I? Or they kind of changed how they look at committees and they take the superintendent of record now as representing the school
The whole-
districts.
the-
Yeah.
all of them.
Instead of individual people from each school district.
So, is there anything else for the good of the order? Now, we're going to adjourn over to the, do we have to formally adjourn?
Do another meeting to learn. This is only your first meeting. We have another agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
make a motion to adjourn, continue. I'll move it. We'll get it together.
It's done.
Now we can go back to the second.
Okay, let's start our official committee meeting. This is not- Management Committee. Okay, yep. Steve, could you take the management committee?
Item A. Item B. Item C. Item D. Looks like we have a name for item E, Stacy, and then item F, which would be the resolution authorizing the issuance of the tax revenue note. What is?
F.
Okay, I have a question now. is the time?
I'm sorry, yes, I'm sorry. I had a question about that. Is that what you're in question? You go ahead. If you're probably going to ask what I was asking.
No, I mean, I did read over the documentation that we received.
Could you put your,
Thanks. I did receive the documentation about the 13 million, but I certainly needed more explanation on that, so is Mr. Heckman's gonna, okay, I'll let you explain first, if is that,
That's the same thing I wanted to do.
okay, thank you.
As you are all aware, that we've been working throughout this year, as all Pennsylvania school districts have, without a state budget, which means that we have not been receiving the typical funds that we receive from the state of Pennsylvania. Such items as the basic education funding, transportation funding, retirement funding, all of those things are non-existent up to this point, which means that we are using up all the money that we have in order to run the district. We are not alone in this. If you were to look throughout the state of Pennsylvania, you'll find that there are several school districts, many school districts really, who are in the same position, whereby they are, if this continues much longer, will be out of money to operate their school district. At this point, I would anticipate that we will probably be out of money sometime in February. As of this morning, we had about $8.2 million in cash. We spend roughly $3 million a month, which means in February we will be out of funds. We started looking earlier in the year if this budget impasse would continue on. What could we do to keep operating? And so it was probably back in September or so that we contacted Fulton Bank, and we've also contacted the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund, and also a local bank in regards to receiving a tax revenue anticipation measure on a credit note to carry us over until we get a state budget and start getting the state subsidies that we typically receive. The documents that you were sent were documents from Fulton Bank. We initially, when we first started talking to them, they were talking about a 3.25% interest rate, $3,500 of closing costs. Those have come down substantially. We asked for a $13 million loan, which is basically the amount of money that we received from the state. And so if we were not to receive any money from the state for the whole year, which seems unimaginable, but if that should happen, we would have enough money to carry us through to the end of June. The documents that you see there indicate that we are being quoted an interest rate now of not 3.25%, which is what they originally quoted us, but it now is a combination of a fixed rate of 1.5% plus the 30-day LIBOR rate, which is an acronym that stands for the London Interbank Offered Rate. It's a interest rate that the large banks in London offer to each other. It's a common rate that is used on loans today, commercial loans today. It is a variable rate. As of yesterday, that rate was 0.243%. If you add that to your 1.5% rate that Fulton is quoting us, we're looking at a rate of about 1.743%, down quite a bit from the initial 3.25% that was offered. We are looking to close on this loan sometime in January if we don't get a budget from the state, because we will be out of money in February. I don't really know what else to tell you. Our options, there are some school districts in the state who are saying we're just going to close down because we don't have any money. We're just going to close down, close the doors, nobody's coming to school, nobody's going to get paid, we're not going to pay our bills. I suppose that's always an option if you want to go that route. I don't like the option, but it's there. The other option, what some school districts are doing, is that they are not paying their bills. They're holding on to their invoices, they're not paying them. We have not done that. We have paid every bill that has come in. We are not late on paying our bills. We have paid all of our employees. There are school districts who are not paying their teachers, who are not paying their employees. They're just holding off until they see if they can get some money into the state. We have made every payroll, and we intend to make every payroll, subject to what happens with this loan. And so the other option that we have is to go out and try to find money to carry us through to the end of the year, and that's what this loan is all about. $13 million loan to try to carry us through until we receive the money from the state. Hopefully it won't be needed. As of today, if you look at the PDU website that we have available to us, the state is stating that they are going to pay our district $3.6 million in January 4th. But then they have the disclaimer that says, well, it might not be January 4th. It's depending on whatever we get budget. So we don't know. They don't know. We don't know yet when the state money is going to come through. So we're doing what we can to try to make arrangements so that we can continue to operate. And that's the purpose of this resolution that you have in front of you tonight. That's the purpose of this entire loan. Is to try to keep running when we're out of money. And then it will be paid back as we receive the state money, the money from the state. We will then pay it back to Fulton Bank.
Mr. Heckman, what's the anticipated interest at the 1.743?
We would be borrowing the money in $100,000 increments.
Okay.
That's the terms on the loan. That could be $100,000 at a time. It could be $1 million at a time. It depends on what the needs are at the moment. Our payrolls are somewhere between, they're about $520,000 every 2 weeks. And so we know at least every 2 weeks we have to borrow $500,000 to make our payroll.
Okay, so it's, to say it in layman's terms, it's like a line of credit.
That's exactly what it is, yes. The official name is tax and revenue anticipation note, but it's a line of credit.
Okay.
And I was just wondering, the closing costs, you said they would be significantly lower than
The
originally.
interest rate is significantly lower, from 3.25% to 1.5% plus the 30-day LIBOR rate. The closing costs are going, we initially quoted us for $3,500, and that's been reduced to $2,500.
So you pay that no matter what, even if you don't end up needing to take the money out?
You pay that the day of the closing. And you don't actually sign the documents at full.
When was the closing date?
The loan back in the state around January 7th, but depending on when we feel like we need it. If we think we can get by until 2 weeks later, then we'll do that. But if not, then we'll have to do it then.
Any other questions? Well, I just have some comments, but not any questions for Dan. Thank you, Dan, for that. I did ask Dan about, just to get a grip on how much, if we borrowed $1 million the first month, or $2 million, or $3 million. And so, according to his figures, if we borrowed the first month, well, it wouldn't be $1 million. It would probably be the 2 or 3, but if we borrowed just $1 million, it would be basically rounded up to $1,500 for 1 month. If we borrowed $2 million, it would be $2,900, and if we borrowed $3 million, it would be $4,357. So basically $4,400. And I'm rounding those off just to kind of give you a heads up. The biggest concern is obviously that the first month we might, if we had to borrow the $3 million at say $4,400. The next month we carry that, but then we borrow another, so that keeps going up, and it obviously will affect our ending fund balance. And an interesting thing was on, I believe, on the PSBA, one of those emails, or whatever, that they will not reimburse us for any interest that we incur because they're not paying the monies that they should be. However, they are, I'm sure, making interest on the money that they're keeping before they give it to us. So it's kind of, they're winning both ways. They don't have to pay us for the money that we have to borrow, plus they make money on the money that they're not giving us as it's sitting there. So that's just a concern. I just want to throw that out there, is that it will affect obviously our ending fund balance, but on the other side, having everyone out of work because we close the school down totally would also be a major problem. This is again a little soapbox, but to me, I don't know what happened from last year to the last time they did a budget thing, but they used to have it that everything closed down. If they didn't have a budget, everything closed down. The workers, everybody would be upset, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, we'd have a budget. But now it's kind of hidden, so there's no pain. So no pain. The lawmakers in Harrisburg, I don't think, have any incentive to move forward. Hopefully they do, but it doesn't seem like, if we're all the way in December and they still haven't come up with a budget, it is concerning.
Mr. Hickman, can I ask a question? Mr. Hickman, in the budget, has that been anticipated?
I assume you're talking about the interest.
Yes.
payments. The interest payments would actually apply to this year's budget, the 15-16, the current year that we're operating.
Okay, so that would be taken,
Right, that would take around this year.
and would that would just come out of the ending fund balance?
That's right.
Okay.
I just had one additional question. Which months are your highest revenue for taxes? Like, when do the taxes roll in the most? Which months?
The taxes come in, the tax bills go out in July, as I'm sure you're aware of, and they come in from July through December. Your heaviest months probably are your July and August, we get you 2% discounts. After December 31, they're actually delinquent. Then you turn it over to the county, and then there's delinquent fees and interest that are added. So after December 31, it's just delinquent, which is, it's surprising how much of it is delinquent. That comes in after December 31. But most of your major tax money is July through December. And that's why we're able to operate. We're not getting any state money, but we're getting all the tax money. We've gotten probably about $15 million in tax money in these first 6 months.
That's everything for item F. Item G, no doubt you want to hear something on the budget from Dan. If you have anything to share about what we should know about this?
Okay. Each of you should have a packet at your places that was just handed to you tonight. To those of you who have served on the board in previous years, those pages look familiar to you. To those of you who are new, those pages probably look unfamiliar to you. But what that is the proposed budget for the 2016-2017 year, the upcoming year. That cover page that you're looking at shows multiple years. I believe there's 6 years that are on that sheet. Yeah, 6 years. And the column to the far right is the column that we are concerned about tonight. And I would suggest that over this next week, that you take those pages and look them over, and if you have any questions, bring them back next week, okay? But to just highlight a few of the items here that are on this budget for tonight, is that we're beginning the 16-17 fiscal year with the beginning fund balance of $1.9 million, $1,983,000. That's the number to the far right, to the very top of your page, in the 16-17 budget plan column. There is a tax increase that is incorporated into this budget. We have an adjusted index. Again, that terminology is familiar to those who have been on the board before. But we are given a rate through Act 1 from the state, a figure that we cannot go above as far as the tax increase is concerned. There is an index, which is the standard rate, and then there's an adjusted index that some school districts are allowed to have, and we are allowed to have an adjusted index. The standard rate is 2.4%, that the standard school districts are not allowed to raise their taxes above. Our adjusted index is 2.9% for this coming year. This budget has a tax increase of 2.9% incorporated into it. The numbers actually come out to 2.8998%, I believe it was, 2.8998%. And that comes out to about $514,000 in additional tax revenue that would come into the school district. It does not include any money for exceptions. That has not been incorporated into this budget at all. We are entitled to seek for revenue above our index amount by applying for exceptions money through retirement exceptions and special ed exceptions. I do have those estimated amounts on the front cover of your sheet. If you look on your sheet down to the lower right-hand side, I have approximate exceptions, special ed exceptions, a minor amount, $20,488, and estimated retirement exceptions of $227,932. They are not, I'll repeat this again, they are not built into this budget. They can be, and that's one of the purposes of this resolution here tonight. You have in your packet, you have a resolution that authorizes administration to apply for the exceptions. That does not mean that you are approving the exceptions to go into the budget. That simply means you are authorizing the administration to apply for these exceptions to, at some later date, to put them into the budget should you so desire to do so. We did this last year. We applied for the exceptions. You can see the amounts there. They came to $396,579. That was the actual amount that was approved by PDE that we could put into our budget. If you look at the next column to the immediately right of that, you will see how much we actually did put into the budget, and that was zero. So we went from December and through June discussing it, looking at the budget, what our anticipated expenses were going to be, what our revenues were going to be, and finally at the June meeting, and so as you will remember, we talked about putting 0 exceptions or 1/2 of the exceptions or all the exceptions in, and finally came to the 0 exceptions. So if you give approval tonight to apply for the exceptions, that does not mean that they are going into the budget. It just means you're letting us say to PDA, we'd like to apply, to PDE, we'd like to apply for them, and if you agree, here's what we think it should be, and they'll tell us yes or no. Okay? But those numbers are not in this budget as of yet. Total revenues in this budget have increased by a little over $1 million, $1,700,000. Total expenses have increased by more than that, $1,465,000. And a lot of those are expenses that it's hard to know what to do with. That's not the right way to say it. It's hard to get away from them. Retirement expenses that we are mandated to pay have increased by $635,000 this year. That's almost half of our total increase of our expenses. You look at health insurance. Health insurance, I don't know if I have the figures here, I think I do. The health insurance probably is, before I say that. Health benefits went up over $400,000, $403,000. So there's some of these very expensive things that we are pretty well obligated to pay. So with the revenues and the expenditures that we have, we're showing that there's going to be a decrease in our ending fund balance. Whereas at this point, where we're starting at $1.9 million, at the end of the year, the figure that shows the ending fund balance is $648,675. Now that that's been said, if you look at your budget sheets and your budget highlight sheets that are attached to your budget pages, the very first note that on those budget highlight sheets says that any additional monies that we might receive from the 15-16 state budget or the 16-17 state budget is not included in these figures. We always try to budget conservatively, to budget safely, and if that money comes from the state, which we hope it does, then that will be just in addition to the ending fund balance that you see here. But your purpose here tonight, one of your main purposes here is to pass a resolution to allow us to at least apply for the exceptions, or to say no, we're not going to allow you to do that. We're going to stick strictly to the index of 2.9%, not over that. I know I talked a lot, I rambled, I do that. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, just to clarify though, the key point they're really voting on is just to have that as an option. Obviously, last year we voted to have that as an option. We decided not to use it. But if we don't vote for that option, the doors then close. We cannot in March say, oh my gosh, something came up, we didn't realize it, we want to apply for those exceptions. It's done. If you say no tonight, that door is totally closed. It's, to me, kind of prudent just to say, yes, let's have that as an option. We obviously didn't use it last year. We could not use it again this year. But not to have it at all and then something unforeseen happen would be kind of a shame, from my opinion. Oh, yeah. We won't vote for it until next week. Thank you.
Good.
Anything else?
I had one question, Steve. It's actually from letter A. I wasn't sure. I was supposed to ask them.
I'm sorry, I went kind of fast.
No, that's all right. I didn't. We did it at the end. I think I might know the answer, but just with the redesignation of Rachel Nelson into a long-term substitute for the year, my question was, I saw she had 3 years of teaching experience and at 3 different schools, but it says she's coming in at bachelor's, which I understand, but then level 14. Now, do we go up, is year 1 actually considered level 15 and we go down? I actually was just thinking that. Maybe that's, how's level 14 work?
I believe so. I'm watching nodding heads. It depends on, I would say you can address maybe that situation better.
I can't, yes, we used to be the other way, where step 1 was entry level.
Right.
Now entry level is step 14.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's just opposite. It goes down. Now as you go up in years, each year
Right.
If you're here 3 years, then you'll be down.
Got it. Thank you.
They give credit for previous years, correct?
only if they're contracted.
If they're contracted.
Yeah,
Once
and
they're contracted,
hers
they're
were not,
accredited.
so she had done some long-term.
Is this the position that we added to the classroom, or is this?
This is a result of the position that we added. We moved the person who was in the CSR position to the full-time position.
Okay.
So then
this
that
is created
opened
out.
up her, she was in a CSR, a classroom size reduction
Okay.
position. So that opened that position up. So Rachel is filling that long-term
okay.
position. That's a grant position.
That's a year-to-year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, glad I believe that's everything. Programs committee?
Any questions on item A? Item B, and you did receive the attachment, I assume, in the packet. And item C was the request for the field trip. If no questions, that concludes programs.
Rachel, would you do?
Sure. Item A. Item B.
How could that work? I've had
Yeah, I
questions
was
about that.
thinking the same thing. How's that gonna work when you have your school locked down and you gotta beep in to get in? How are we gonna be, Mary, do we have any clue how we're gonna be able to let people go in to vote into the school that's?
All know, do you have an idea?
Do we have any ideas?
That's pretty.
Yeah,
Other school districts close down for the day. We don't have school.
And some do have schools, and yeah, that's something we have to, if you okay them to use it, that we have to work through those logistics.
Okay.
I think depending where they would set it up, and I think Dr. Bell talked to Lori Oliver about it, but the first step is like first getting the approval, but
I think it's a good thing for schools to do that. You know, I think it's very important that everybody vote, and but the logistics, I guess, was my question, huh? You know, and I guess these people voted at the fire station.
Bonnie, I think I just have a little bit more information. The fire company had requested that the location get moved, and so the county is just kind of looking around for suggestions. Some other locations that could be used possibly would be a church. So I'm sure they're inquiring at other locations just besides the school. But I'm sure they also have more information, maybe Dr. Bell.
And another possibility I heard was also the borough building. Okay. That's not a possibility.
Well, it's just super small. I don't know where in the world we do that.
Oh, okay, it's too. I just heard that that was a possibility as well.
Is the cafeteria used as the gym?
Yeah.
I know growing up, I attended an elementary school that was a building, and we would just have, we would eat in our classrooms, but there were people coming in and out all the time, so when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, that's a great idea, what a great civics lesson, and then you say that, I didn't
But
even think
that's-
about the security.
That's in the day.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
buildings
back in
were
the-
open,
yes,
you could
I
walk
know.
anywhere.
But that's a huge concern, Bonnie.
Yeah, I mean, we don't allow parents in the building without clearances. So
Right,
how would we,
right, absolutely.
but yeah, I had the same experience, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember doing it. So unless we want to have election day be a day off, because I know a lot of schools do that. I think the whole state of Maryland has, all of their schools have off on election day.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So move. You can't make a motion, right? As president. I don't think, can the president make a motion? I don't think so.
Okay.
Also move.
Yes, to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.